Here is why repeal is a real possibility.
廃止が現実味を帯びてきた理由はここにある。
Here is why repeal is a real possibility. That act was largely repealed in 1946.
その法律は1946年に大部分が廃止された。
That act was largely repealed in 1946. The unpopular measure was completely repealed in 1887.
この不人気な措置は1887年に完全撤廃された。
The unpopular measure was completely repealed in 1887. This requirement was subsequently repealed in 1980.
その後、この要求は1980年に廃止されました。
This requirement was subsequently repealed in 1980. The repeal effort gained support nationally and internationally.
この廃止運動は国内外から支持を集めました。
The repeal effort gained support nationally and internationally. The state repealed mandatory auto inspection in 1981.
同州では1981年に車検の義務化が廃止された。
The state repealed mandatory auto inspection in 1981. This income tax was repealed in 1872.
この所得税は1872年に廃止された。
This income tax was repealed in 1872. Most were gradually repealed over subsequent decades.
そのほとんどはその後数十年の間に徐々に廃止された。
Most were gradually repealed over subsequent decades. The order was later suspended and finally repealed.
その後、この命令は一時停止され、最終的に廃止された。
The order was later suspended and finally repealed. The law was later repealed on constitutional grounds.
その後、憲法上の理由から、この法律は廃止された。
The law was later repealed on constitutional grounds. The infamous law was repealed in 1957.
この悪名高い法律は1957年に廃止された。
The infamous law was repealed in 1957. The law had been repealed in 1987.
この法律は1987年に廃止された。
The law had been repealed in 1987. The regulation was eventually repealed in 1927.
結局、この規制は1927年に撤廃された。
The regulation was eventually repealed in 1927. The likelihood of its repeal is very remote.
廃止される可能性は極めて低い。
The likelihood of its repeal is very remote. It was enforced until its repeal in 1988.
1988年に廃止されるまで施行された。
It was enforced until its repeal in 1988. The reduction in tax revenues from repeal is relatively large.
廃止による税収の減少幅は比較的大きい。
The reduction in tax revenues from repeal is relatively large. It was never again to be repealed.
もう二度と廃止されることはなかった。
It was never again to be repealed. The legislation enacted provided for repeal in 1988.
制定された法律では1988年に廃止されることが規定されています。
The legislation enacted provided for repeal in 1988. The tax continued until it was repealed in 1924.
この税金は1924年に廃止されるまで続けられた。
The tax continued until it was repealed in 1924.